we go. We're rolling. Okay. So, thanks for meeting with me. I know you guys filled out the client pre-consult questionnaire. So thanks for filling that out. I know it's kind of extensive. And we're meeting today because of Arlo's fear of the heater. Okay. So,
and the air conditioner.
And the air conditioner, which is essentially the same unit, but does it make two different noises?
Not really.
No. Okay. It comes out of the same vents. Okay. But all year round, it's an issue because on the hotter days and then on the Okay. So how this is gonna work is for the first 10 minutes or so, I'll ask you some questions that'll kind of help me figure out what I think might be going on. And then I'll give you an idea of what I think is happening. And then I can go on to explain, why it's happening and how common it is actually. In fact, this is the second case that I'm working on right now for exactly the same thing. So clearly something that a lot of dogs have had issues with and are having issues with. And then I'll explain kind of the science behind it. So the type of training that I'm doing is called behavioral modification. So the idea behind it, and it's a science-based method. So I think a lot of us think of training as kind of like that old school method of like leash pops and, a little bit more strict style of training, which a lot of trainers aren't working with these days. So it's a lot more research into the psychology of the dogs, and it kind of helps to explain the behavior itself. So instead of trying to just get the dog to stop doing whatever it's doing or start doing whatever it's doing, we kind of dig a little deeper and try and figure out exactly why the dog is doing that and see what we can't rearrange in the environment in order to stop that from happening. So it's, in a way, it's a little bit less invasive of a method, and it really gets to like the root of the issue as opposed to just a Band-Aid, and sort of like fear-induced management, if you will. And so after that, I'll kind of explain to you what has to happen specifically in your home in order to manage that. We can go through some different options as far as training plans and what I am offering. And then from there, I'll give you an idea, just kind of like demo a few things for you. So if you decide to do the work on your own, you'll know exactly how to do it. And then I'll open it up to questions from you guys. But first, I wanted to get you talking about Arlo's history. I know I have here that he was rescued through an organization called Underdog Rescue, which I'm familiar with. And I know you adopted him at 3 years old, give or take. It's harder with Chihuahuas and Chihuahua mixes.
Yeah. They estimated 1 to 3, and we think he's, because of the graying and stuff, we think he's probably 6 now. So that's the math.
That's the math. He's about 6 years old. Okay. And so when exactly did the behavior start with the heater and the AC?
Yeah, it was like after he'd been with us a year or more.
Okay, so he had heard it already and had no reaction.
Correct.
And then suddenly it just seemed to almost appear out of nowhere.
And if it's helpful, like there are other bad behaviors that similarly started to develop well into him living with us.
Okay. Which ones were those?
Being protective of me.
Okay.
In great detriment to Max.
Okay.
Becoming aggressive toward me when he's protected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else has he gotten worse with?
That's kind of the main
Mostly.
one.
Yeah. Seems like he's gotten more comfortable in himself and then decided that these things. But the HVAC stuff is curious because he's always, when he suspects that we might be turning on or off any of the heater cold, he'll go and sniff the vent.
Oh, okay.
And look real anxious.
Okay. So that would lead me to believe that there's a smell associated with the heater.
Yeah, although when
it
kicked on yesterday morning, he was under the covers asleep, and he woke up and came out, and I didn't hear anything. I didn't know why he was getting up out of the bed, and
Okay.
it was because there was something where he heard it go on.
It was almost like you couldn't even detect it, but he picked it up.
He knew right
There's
away.
something
There's
imperceptible about it.
Yeah, okay. And dogs have kind of a wider range of hearing, like the frequencies are different for dogs, so it's possible it's something that you can't
It's the
pick
click
up on.
of the thermostat that
Got
we
it.
can hear if we're close to it.
And that's just the cue
It's
that
enough
gets him.
Yeah, that gets him. Yeah.
Okay.
But when it first started happening, he would either run to the bottom of the stairs and sit shaking, or he would run underneath the bed where he never goes and sit shaking.
Okay.
And it's gotten gradually, now he just shakes wherever he is and kind of is anxious around the house, but he doesn't run to those safe places.
All right.
Actually, that's not true. Sometimes he still runs to his bed.
Okay. But that's a good thing. I mean, the fact that he has a place where he knows he can feel safe. But once he's in his bed, he's still kind of trembling and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I would take him out for a walk and he knew that it was on, he wouldn't want to come home. He would just keep walking when we would try to pull him back to the house.
Oh, wow.
He was like, I don't want to go back to the house
Yep.
if the...
Yeah. Okay.
Like he had a memory all of a sudden.
Oh, is that true? Yes, the one ear up. Because, I can tell you're all talking about me. Taking notes mentally.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all very interesting. But was there anything... Okay, so you mentioned it was about a year into using the heater and the AC that he suddenly took notice and decided that it was a scary thing. Was there anything else you can think of that was going on at that time that may have...
Any association he would have with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a long time. I mean, there are long times where we don't turn them on. So he just could have forgotten about it and then become anxious by it. But I can't think of any association he would have with it, like any difference in his
Yeah.
life that came.
One of the things I could think of, but I mean, it's just guessing, and sometimes that doesn't always help, is if he happened to be sitting close to the vent when it clicked on one day, and it spooked him a little bit, he may have made a kind of a negative association there. But I'm not really sure. It's hard to say, and so there's really no point in assuming. Okay, and so let's see. You talked about his tendency to be a little bit protective of you. Generally, when we think, and I just learned this myself, when we think of dogs as being protective, it's technically what they're doing is they're resource guarding, which is interesting because they see you as a resource. My dog Turtle, of course, does this all the time, and it's something that smaller dogs tend to get away with a little bit more, because if a larger dog did it, we would sort of, quote unquote, nip it in the bud sooner. But smaller dogs, they're manageable, and I think sometimes we don't always think of them as being necessarily a big enough threat to really manage that issue. But technically it's a resource guarding issue. So he sees you as a resource, whether it be he gets attention and affection from you. That's his resource. That's his motivation, And so he's, in a way, I guess, protecting that. Like he wants to keep you as his own, essentially. So just to give you a little bit of background information on that, and I can send you links about that too if you think it might be helpful. You also mentioned that you had another trainer here. It was a couple years ago? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you reached out to them for what reason?
We wanted him to do basic things like come when we called him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You mentioned touch.
Yeah.
So he learned.
Been very successful.
That's cool. And so you're still practicing that with him.
When he's there seems to be, I don't know what the reaction is in response to, but it's similar to his response when he's resource guarding.
Mm-hmm.
It's as though he's possessed.
Okay.
And sometimes he can be sitting totally peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
Often it's when we're all on the same level.
Okay.
And all of a sudden it's like a switch flips and he gets really angry at
Okay.
Max. And similarly in the, like, he'll come except when he's sort of in another headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of feeling wild and uncontained, and
Okay.
then he it's like he can't register touch.
Okay. So when you say that he kind of like goes into a different state, what does that physically look like? Like what does
His
what
eyes
is
change.
Okay.
Is the
And
bares his
he
teeth.
bares his teeth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so is he growling at the same time?
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Arlo? If we could get you to enunciate, that would be helpful, because then we could just ask you. Okay, let me write this down. So is he trembling at all when he's doing this? Okay, the tail between the legs, the whole, okay, so the body language is very...
Yep, he was just doing it.
And he's bitten?
Yes.
Okay, you, him, both?
Not me.
Okay.
He's like grazed me when I've tried to intervene and physically remove him
Okay.
away from Max.
Okay.
He's growled at you when
He
you
has.
come up on me in the bed and the two of us are
Yeah. Sometimes he's
Okay.
resource protecting his bed,
just
Okay.
and sometimes it's me.
Okay. So we might have a resource guarding situation.
so Julia will
if we
get
don't.
growled at every once in a while, but she won't get bit like I will.
Okay. I can talk to you guys about how to work with that too.
Great.
It's actually a project that I'm working with Turtle as well, the other little dog. So when he's
There it is.
okay.
Arlo, no!
Arlo, is there, in that state, if you were to tell him to go to his bed, would he go to his bed? He just
He doesn't
won't.
know that,
No.
probably.
The only thing that gets him off
Oh.
is for Max to be that aggressive, and it's just something he started trying to do.
Okay.
He used to like get up and move himself,
Uh-huh.
and then we saw him with another man at an outdoor gathering, and this man like got very alpha with him and shut him down immediately, and
Okay.
so we sort of got a sense that maybe that's what Max should try to do.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know.
I know. I mean, it's hard because that's just what we do, is like kind of problem solve the situation and try different things and see what works. I can definitely look into that a little bit more. I already kind of have, because you mentioned that this was a problem in the past, and we can see what it is that is cueing it. So one of the things that I'm working on in this class, and what I'm working on as a trainer, is what is called Antecedent Arrangement. So the whole idea, it's kind of like an ABC process. Something in the environment is triggering that behavior. And that behavior serves a purpose for Arlo. So what we need to do, or try to do, is sort of rearrange the environment so whatever it is that's cueing that is no longer cueing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it could be a simple procedure, it could be a little bit more complicated, but seeing it just now is really good information for me. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing to see him in that state, and to see the kind of like confusion as far as like how to manage it, because obviously you don't want to be forceful with him, but when he's lunging at you, you know, it's kind of it's just kind of a difficult situation to manage, but it's not unmanageable. It's definitely something that we can work on.
He's right under there growling.
I can
That.
see it, and
Every
it does.
once in a while he whimpers.
Uh-huh.
Growl.
But I bet if Max like consistently stared at him, he'd get aggressive.
Yeah, I have to watch my eye.
Yeah. Have you ever tried tossing treats? I know it seems counterintuitive because you don't want to feel as if you're rewarding the behavior. But what we were about to get into, and what I would like to get into, and especially because a lot of this is related, I'm beginning to think, is it's a method called counter conditioning. It falls under the veil of classical conditioning. So I won't get too technical, but he has, to kind of touch on the heater real quick, he has a negative association with the heater. So in a nutshell, what we want to do is we want to counter that relationship. So we want to make the heater equal good things. And it is a bit of a process. It might take some time, but it's not impossible, and it can absolutely be done. What is happening right now is resource guarding. So for some reason, Arlo feels like he needs to guard me as a resource. What I think needs to happen here, Arlo, is to teach him that he doesn't need to guard me. You know, that like he's perfectly happy either going to his bed or playing with a treat. And it could be something as simple as having something to keep him occupied in situations like this. So if you have guests over, I don't know if this has happened in the past with guests that you've had. Okay, so having him maybe in the meantime in the house, outside of all of the excitement, with something that will take some time for him to work on, either a bully stick or a licky mat. I was planning on getting into the licky mat a little bit later because it's a tool that can be used that sort of helps to manage dogs' stress levels, and it keeps them occupied. So having him in a safe location, somewhere that he feels comfortable and confident, where he's not, feeling a little bit overexcited with all of the people around, and giving him something to do is one way to manage that. And I think eventually he will start realizing that this is a good thing, And in the end, it could even be when people come over, oh, yay, I get to go to my bed, or maybe it's time to reintroduce the crate and have him, realize that this is a time for him to kind of calm down, and he gets to chew on his toy or kind of have some downtime on his own. And we can get into that. Let me sort of get back on track and make sure that I'm not missing anything here else that I wanted to ask you.
I'm also just hopeful that your phone can hear you well enough as it's videotaping.
Yeah. I have a problem with having a low voice. Can
With
hear
the
me?
mask on too.
Yeah.
Just,
I can always...
No!
Arlo, come on. Does he have a bed inside?
Yeah.
Maybe we should put him... Do you want some treats?
Arlo, come. Please come. Come on.
In our experience, he won't sit in it if there's too much
If there's people,
excitement.
yeah.
I mean, sometimes when people are over, he'll go and just sit by himself on the couch.
Okay.
But sometimes he'll come out, and he doesn't always. He often causes trouble at night. Usually
Yeah.
with me. But it's as much. I mean, when Julia and he are lying reading the paper, that's a more dangerous time than any other, because as soon as I come within 5 feet, he starts growling and then
Yeah.
comes after me.
And you mentioned it's sometimes when he's tired. It's almost as if, or is in the evening, or...
It's at night especially, and
Yeah.
outdoors at night. Although it happens indoors at night too. It almost never happens in the morning. In the morning
Okay.
we cuddle in bed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm just wondering if it has something to do with his...
State of mind later in the day or something.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. That would act as what's considered a setting event, something
Arlo, go lie
in
down.
the environment on sort of a grander scale that is acting to make whatever it is in the environment that's cueing him more likely, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all things that I'm gonna look at and you know, all the information that you guys are giving me is helping to kind of like piece all, you know, the puzzle pieces are starting to come together a little bit. And let me see. So as far as
You look really cool.
oh, thank you. As far as motivation for him, obviously he's treat motivated. Does he tend to be as equally motivated by toys, or is it more like food?
So he played with a lot of toys early on, and he'd get obsessive about them and want you to play with him constantly, and so then we stopped doing the toy thing.
Okay.
It just was incessant.
Okay. Would he bring them to you and kind of put them in your lap and sort of do that
So
kind of
like
thing?
throw the toy
Okay, yeah,
until you know, just constant.
Okay.
Constant.
And so you would kind of do that for him for a while, and then
And
you'd
then
have to.
And then you'd have to
And
go
then he
do
would
something
whine
else,
for the
and he
other
would
20
whine.
hours
And
a day.
right,
Yeah.
right.
They just could never give it up.
Yeah, and that's also a tricky thing because that's, I mean, it's obvious that he's being reinforced by the play. So, you know, you kind of want to be able to give them a boundary as far as like, it's playtime now, and now it's not, you
Right.
know, and then you can reinforce in another way. But we can get into that
Arlot
later
Consult.
too.
Also,
Oh, yes,
if
good.
he's upset, he's not interested in treats at all.
Okay.
Like if I were to try
Yeah.
to give him a treat when the heater goes on or when he's freaking out at me, he would have no interest.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's very common, and that's something called the threshold scale. So basically, if say the scary thing, we don't have to say because the scary thing is the heater, and then here's Arlo. So if this is a scale from like 1 to 10, it is a pretty fluid range. So as he's getting, as the heater clicks on,
Go sit down.
it kind of takes him from 1 to 10, it sounds like right now. And he gets to the point where he's over threshold. And when dogs are over threshold, their sensory abilities are so overwhelmed that they literally cannot take on anything else.
Wait.
So they're not going to be interested in treats. They're not really going to be able to hear you, to take commands. They're not easily motivated. So telling them to go to their bed is just kind of useless, you know? So when we're talking about counter conditioning and desensitizing the dog to the sound of the heater, what the plan would entail is to, because just turning the heater on is just going to send him right into a state of panic, and you're not going to have anything.
Toward the heater gets him going. But
Yeah. So that's actually where we would start. So the idea here would be you take a step towards the heater switch, you toss him a couple treats, you retreat, you go do something else, you do it again. You kind of take another step towards it. Maybe once he starts realizing that you stepping towards the heater equals treats, then you can move on to the next level. And the next level in this case wouldn't be turning the heater on. It would actually be, and like I said, this is a really slow process, but it's really the only way to get them to understand and learn for themselves that the heater is not a scary thing after all. So after you've what we call desensitized him and counter conditioned him into seeing that you moving in the direction of the heater equals treats, that's the cue for us that we can move on to playing a recording of the heater at the very lowest setting. And so we have to look at these different elements as sort of separate pieces. So after we've developed what's called a CER, conditioned emotional response to you stepping in the direction of the heater, we play the recording at the lowest setting. Every time we play it, you feed treats, or you play with his favorite toy, or whatever it is, you just make the world very exciting and happy for that moment in time. And then you stop playing it, and it's as if, you know, everything is back to normal, and you go about your day. And then you continue along that path without raising the volume until you sort of see him kind of perk up, and then you can incrementally increase the volume to a certain degree. So the way I would set it up, and I would have a written plan for you guys, would be to incrementally set that up till you hit a certain point, and then the second step would be playing it for a little bit longer. So you'd keep the volume the same, and then you'd increase duration. And so the entire time, so you say you start with 10 seconds at, say, volume 5. And then you're going to play volume 5 for 15 seconds and feed treats and feed treats. And if he's still happy and excited, then you can add 20 seconds and feed treats and feed treats. And do this kind of like maybe 5 sets, you know? And then once that seems to be working at, say, 30 seconds to a minute or so, then you could start raising volume again. So it's just this really gradual, you know, it's almost as if you're doing it so slowly that the dog's not even gonna notice. And the dog is gonna start associating that sound with treats and happy things to the point where eventually, and it's a very, like I said, like careful setup, eventually you'll be able to put all the pieces together, and he will, when he hears that radiator click on, and that's another thing that's going to be a part of the recording that we're going to have to desensitize separately, that clicking sound. Once all of those pieces have been desensitized and counter conditioned, we could stream them together, and when he hears that go off, it's going to be time for treats, and he'll be happy. So another element that we could add to the equation is masking. So I think we would do this maybe after you've gone through the volume, and at any point during this process, if you notice him kind of going over threshold is what it's called, like he starts trembling, he starts seeming, you know, all of those body language signs that he's been giving you, just stop and kind of start over, rewind a little bit, finish for that day, and kind of, you know, just go back to kindergarten, as they say. And so, not, you know, I don't want to scare you in thinking this is gonna take a while, but for every dog it's a little bit different, but it has proven to be very effective for a lot of dogs. One thing we want to stay away from is a method that used to be used ages ago, and in reality it's traumatic for the dog, and which is flooding. So this is a method that I'm sure you're familiar with, the television show that was very popular for a while, where if you kind of overwhelm the dog with something that the dog is afraid of, he'll eventually kind of give up and just accept it. But what's really happening there is the dog is shutting down, and so it seems like he's in a calm state, but actually he's emotionally just shut down, give up, just traumatized, you know? So that's exactly what we're trying to avoid, because we want it to be a learning experience for Arlo, and we want him to feel like he has a choice in the matter, you know? He's choosing to appreciate the sound of the heater and know that it's going to be a good thing for him.
Hear that?
Yeah. So, as far as a management plan goes, what I would recommend would be, you mentioned you have the heater set to a certain temperature, so it just clicks on.
We manually manage it
Okay.
to partly assess, do we really need it at this moment?
Yeah. So that's one thing I was gonna say. Since during the training process, we don't want to have any setbacks, I would say, if possible, during this period, don't use the heater unless he's not home. Maybe if you have access to a space heater, if it gets cold, that might have to be a temporary solution. if there are any kind of unsafe hiding places that he tends to run to, like the stairwell that we came in, maybe get a baby gate for the stairwell. One other thing I was going to mention is, I started to mention, was masking. So this is when you can play either the radio, the TV, or white noise, and try and actually cover the sound. You tried that?
Well, the noise machine was on yesterday morning, and he was under the covers, totally asleep.
Okay.
And it just triggered. And so it's very unclear what the trigger actually is. I'm not convinced it's sound, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe more than sound. I think it's maybe a sound and a smell at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, something about that click, I think he's very attuned to.
Yeah. Something that you can't pick up on, but
Yeah,
for
there would
some
have to be a
reason.
loud masking.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it, maybe the remote.
Yeah.
And where he couldn't see that you're turning it on.
So when you turn it on, is it you turn it on and then it's like a pause before it clicks on? Is that kind of
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know exactly. I mean, the only thing I could think of that might be helpful and it might be worth trying without him in the house would be to see how long that time frame is and try and maybe cover that sound when
Right
you
when it's happening.
yeah. You know,
Like cough when it goes off.
or
The click happens immediately, and then it takes a second for the right? No, the click happens when the rest
it's
kicks in.
delayed, and then it.
yeah.
And also, when you turn it off, it keeps going until it's ready to turn off.
Okay.
So there's not like a short
Yeah.
stop to it.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, it
mean,
takes like 30 seconds or a minute.
and now he's made an association between that clicking sound and the whooshing sound, and so the whooshing sound, regardless, is still going to provoke these.
Yeah, and as Max said, like sometimes the trigger is just watching one of us go to turn it on.
Yeah, exactly. And so that would be the start of the plan. Would be trying to counter condition that particular movement. So maybe one thing you could do is like keep a jar of treats near the thermostat, and every time you move towards it, instead of turning the thermostat on, toss a treat in his direction. So we're at 32 minutes. Let's see. Okay, so another question I had for you as far as managing the fear in him. Have you tried any kind of supplements like a CBD or there's all sorts of natural supplements that often help dogs. And then, of course, in addition to that, there's prescription medications that can help dogs that have extremely high levels of anxiety, that just like people sometimes need to be managed by medication. You know, have you ever talked to the vet?
We've tried CBD, which seemed to make him sick.
Oh, okay.
But actually, he's a pukey dog, so
okay.
we could try that again. But also, he doesn't like to take. I can't put a dropper in his mouth. He doesn't like to take pills.
Yeah.
So CBD treats might be a thing to
Yeah.
try.
What was that? Quieter times, gentler times.
Oh, melatonin, which the other trainer said that it makes them feel weird not to give them.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken melatonin myself, and sometimes
It doesn't work for me.
It kind of makes you sleepy. Yeah, they have also one that we use at Rocket Dog called Calming Moments.
That's the one, isn't it? Oh, we have some up there.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, it's something worth experimenting with. You know, a lot of if you decided to go the route of prescription medications, if you felt like it was necessary, they tend to take longer to
Change behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Like the body takes a while to kind of build up to it. But something like CBD or any of these different types of
Arlot.
natural supplements, tend to be a little bit faster acting. Sometimes if you for the droppers, if you put it in like wet food or in a little bit of chicken broth along with their food, it kind of helps them to absorb it a little bit better into their system. That's what we also do at the shelter for the dogs. Almost everyone at the shelter is on CBD because they're all a little bit anxious and stressed out. And it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to talk to you about the management plans. We did that. So as far as options, the way that my service works is that you have 3 different training options. So the first is what is called day training. So this would be if you found you didn't have a lot of time to work on this yourself, I could come over at set times of the day and I could work with Arlo myself one-on-one in order to kind of counter condition and desensitize him to the heater. So it would be a slow process, it would be a frequent process, and it would require me coming over here, and being in your home, which I know with COVID is kind of a little tricky these days. So the other plan is a coached session. So what that would mean is I would work with you to work with Arlo. So I would walk you through the whole plan. I would write everything up for you, so it's really easy to follow. You'll know exactly how to do it, when to do it. I would be available to you, either over the phone, email, texting, whatever works, for feedback from you, because I would sort of need to see how he's progressing and see his body language when you're trying these different methods to introduce the heater at a very low volume at first. Maybe videoing him, discreetly is sometimes helpful. And then generally something like this can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It all just sort of depends on the dog and what's going on in your life and the dog's life at the time, The last option is one that is kind of a hybrid of the two, and it's what's called while you're away training. So if oftentimes folks that have jobs where, and no one has this right now, travel for work, it would be sort of a board and train, but in your house. Obviously a board and train in my own home wouldn't work because I don't have the same heater system that you do. The environment's completely different. So I would work with Arlo for the first week in order to establish a kind of baseline plan. And then it would be a handover situation where when you get back, I would walk you through what we did. I would explain to you the progress we've made and how much progress continues to need to be done, because it's not going to be done in a week. And then it would be a lot of, just kind of keeping in touch, a lot like the coaching session. So, getting video from you guys, getting feedback from you guys, getting information to see how we can move forward from there. So as far as doing a demo for you guys, I'm not sure if I really, it's a little tricky because he's already sort of in a state of panic and I don't want to step anywhere near the heater and kind of trigger anything, but just, explaining it to you as far as moving in the direction of the heater, like I mentioned, tossing treats, and then while he's not home, have a recording, of the heater somehow when he's not here, and then I can, talk to you a little bit more about how you could play it if you have speakers in the house. That might be better, just because the speakers on an iPhone aren't generally enough to kind of simulate.
We probably have a Bluetooth speaker we could attach to the phone.
Yep, that would be perfect. And then the other aspect of this is we want to do it in different rooms of the house. So I talked about the criteria before as far as playing it at a lower volume and then gradually ramping that up and then adding duration and then ramping that up. The other aspect is doing this in different rooms in the house. So it's generalizing the behavior essentially, so that, if he's in the bedroom when it goes on, he's gonna know the same thing, treats equal, the heater going on, and timing is essential on this. So like I had mentioned, we want to do this when he's in a pretty relaxed state, and as soon as you notice any sort of fear, stop, and kind of just walk away from it, and we can try again at another time. Let's see. Did you have any other questions for me as far as...
No, I guess when the training is happening, you said do maybe 5 repetitions. That would be one after the other, not like one in the morning, one in the evening, or not every day once, but like in succession.
It would be, but we would also be...
And then take a break and then do it later in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So typically, I'm sure the heater goes on. If you had it set at a certain temperature, the morning it gets cold, it would click on, so we'd want to do it in the morning. In the afternoon during the summer it gets hot, and it's the same type of thing, so you'd want to do it in the afternoon, and in the evening again, of course. So these are all different, we just kind of have to think about the environment and in the whole, and kind of work with what we have there. And another thing that, going back to his resource guarding, it might be worth your while to maybe do a little bit more crate training with him, if that's something that you feel comfortable doing, so that, he can't practice the behavior. If it's something that happens when guests are over, we want to make sure he's not given the opportunity to continue doing this, because the more dogs are practicing a certain behavior, the more ingrained that behavior becomes. And so it's just, again, part of kind of the management plan. So the idea being setting the dog up for success. So making it easy for him to do the right thing as opposed to do the thing that you don't want him to do,
Do you, I'm just curious, so it looked like when he started to, before he crosses the threshold of actual aggression, but where he's getting upset, distracting with a treat.
That's, yes.
Seems to be working.
Yep.
I mean, it just has worked.
Yep.
We've been sitting here. If he's past the threshold and he's attacking Max, is physical intervention and picking him up to physically remove him reinforcing behavior?
It is, and the other part, and the more important part, I think, is that it's putting yourself in harm's way, because when we try and step in there and grab a dog that's already, acting in a sort of aggressive way, they're going to redirect on you,
Right.
and it's not targeting you, it's just they're kind of in a state where they,
So I'm just thinking about the response. So
yeah.
trying to distract,
Yeah.
and what should Max be doing?
So what I would say is, like you mentioned, ideally you're going to want to catch this behavior before it can happen. So as soon as you start seeing the body language that he's kind of either sitting too close to someone and then making eye contact with you, exactly what you did before is perfect. Like doing touch. Maybe in that moment, once you have him and he's kind of calm and happy, will be a good time to remove him from the situation entirely, so that he can't practice it over and over again.
And so that's when putting him in his crate.
Yeah.
The toy would be the thing.
I think so, and we don't want the crate to be punishing for him, So part of the crate training is making the crate a safe place for him, and it may not necessarily even mean he has to go to the crate, but maybe, if you can catch it beforehand, like I said, and kind of get him in that state of like, oh, okay, now we're playing, and then you could send him to his bed, and the bed, if you think it's, you know, manageable, could be out here with everyone because he wants the attention, you know, as long as we can secure him in his bed in a way, teaching him to stay, giving him something to occupy him, giving him a puzzle toy or something, so, you know, he has something to kind of keep him busy while he's over there, and he still gets to, you know, hang out with folks. And yeah, like just like you were doing, just kind of catching it before it happens is key. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you an email kind of
Great.
outlining everything that we talked about, because, you know, it's interesting when we're here talking about the heater, and then I already knew that there were some other underlying issues, so to see that, you know, come out is it's good for me to see. I know it's frustrating for you guys, but he's just being a dog. He's not crazy. He's not, like, you know, any different than any other dog. It's behavior has a consequence, and so everything that he's doing is for a reason. And, you know, dogs don't have evil bones in their body. They're not, like, trying to be spiteful or trying to be, they're just being dogs, you know. And I think the environment around dogs can sometimes be overwhelming, and then if you add anxiety to the issue and, you know, excitement outside of that, it's what's called trigger stacking, and sometimes the dogs just become overwhelmed and they don't really know what to do with it. They don't have an outlet, so providing them with an outlet such as like a licky mat or a puzzle toy or a Kong or a treat or a bully stick, one of those like long-acting chew things, can kind of give them something to do. And having a place in the house where they feel comfortable and where they feel safe and where they know that like fun things happen isn't a bad idea either. And then they learn to love it, you know. So
Thank you, Jessie.
yeah, of course, thank you. Anything else you wanna ask or add or
I can't think of anything.
no? Okay, sounds good. Well, like I said, I'll send you an email, and I'll have a bunch of links in there. So if you're interested in doing a little bit more research on any of these things, there'll be plenty for you to kind of look at and keep
Right.
learning about. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.